Well, time now to introduce our political panel, and joining us from Sydney, the Labor MP for Macquarie, Susan Templeman's back. Good to see you, Susan. And Susan's in tandem today with the Liberal MP for Casey in Melbourne, Aaron Violi. Aaron, welcome back for you too. Different combination putting you two together today, so let's see where it takes us. Susan, why don't we start out on inflation? So the IMF, as we've discussed on the program, has us tracking back upwards again next year towards 3.6%. Now, I know that figure has certain assumptions embedded in it. Even so, it's not a great number, is it, to be second only to the Slovak Republic?
Well, no one wants to hear that sort of prediction. And, I guess I wait and see what actually happens, because if we look at what has happened since we came to government, we know when we came to government it was running ahead of 6%. We've halved that. We also had a whole lot of things different to what is happening in the rest of the world. We had inflation peaking later and lower, but we know that it's sticky, and we're doing everything that we can to really manage economically responsibly. And that's why you see two budget surpluses, which are the sorts of things that a responsible government can do to support managing this really challenging issue. So, when you've got, I think, the rate of employment that we're seeing right now shows that there's still growth. And, we don't want to see what they've seen in Britain, which is a technical recession, and New Zealand came close. We've had this steady, not bountiful growth, but we've had steady growth. It's meant jobs. It's meant 1 million jobs since we came to government. And so that's really the big picture that we need to look at. But we know things are tough. We know inflation is a problem, and everything we're doing is about managing that, at the same time supporting people with the challenges that the cost of living poses.
All right, Aaron. So Susan's looking at the big picture, and it's true that not every indicator of economic performance can be encapsulated in a league table produced by the IMF in Washington, can it? I mean, unemployment or employment is great in Australia compared to the others, isn't it?
Well, unemployment, Greg, is holding strong, although I would note that the vast majority of the new jobs that have been created are in the public sector. So that is governments that are making decisions to employ more people. We're seeing in the private sector that jobs are going backwards. We're also seeing a significant decline, over 6% in productivity since the Albanese Labor government came to power. And ultimately, we need to drive productivity growth to bring inflation down sustainably. The Prime Minister, the Treasurer, the government don't have an answer. They don't talk about productivity at all. We are continuing to see inflation very sticky. I mean, the reality is that while inflation has gone from 6.8% to mid threes at the moment, that's essentially a mathematical trick, because what's happened is, after a significantly high number in the first year of the Albanese government, we're then comparing a second year number off that high year base. So the Treasurer likes to take credit for that drop, but it's a mathematical trick that economists are aware of. He's not actually addressing the source of the challenge, which is why we're seeing this sticky inflation. The RBA this week said we're not going to see rate cuts this year. We're very unlikely to see them early next year, and the Australian people are really struggling. I was speaking to a small business owner today who is just hanging on. He's contemplating shutting down his business, unfortunately, because he can't see any relief in sight, and they're completely abandoned by Anthony Albanese and this Labor government.
All right, we know how tough it is out there. So many anecdotes take us towards that conclusion. Aaron, you've just cited another. Why don't we move on to events that unfolded here, and I'm not sure which or whether both of you were actually here in the Great Hall. You can perhaps tell me as I put the question, but Lydia Thorpe, it is being considered by some around the Parliament that she should face some form of censure, perhaps, punishment, privileges, whatever it might be. Susan, worth it or not?
Well, I think it's a matter for the Senate, and I wasn't present when it happened. I've had the privilege of covering royal tours and meeting the King when he was a prince, and meeting his first wife and his mum and his dad. So I felt my time was better spent in my electorate where things are tough, so that I can keep connected with my small businesses. But in terms of what what the issues were that were raised, I think that Senator Thorpe, she didn't deliver a message the way that I would ever choose to deliver it. But one thing I did note was that she raised an issue that's really important to me, which is the return of ancestral remains to Australia. And I've obviously had the privilege to be at some of those ceremonies overseas when remains have been returned to traditional owners, and we've had about 1,700 of them returned since the 1990s, but there's still about 1,000 that we know of in museums right across the globe. So, in terms of issues, my objective would be let's find ways of raising really important issues and gaining support for action on them, rather than, what we saw. And it'll be up to the Senate as to what action is taken.
I understand. And thank you for the additional context in your role as Special Envoy. That is a major body of work that hasn't really finished, has it yet? Aaron Violi, what I know your Liberal colleagues are contemplating over in the Red Room, some form of sanction. There'd be risk in that, wouldn't there? Would you acknowledge in sort of once again shining a light on Senator Thorpe's conduct?
Yeah, well, like Susan, I wasn't at the event. I was in the community, had quite a lot of important community events on Monday, so I didn't attend. But I'm a firm believer that Senator Thorpe did this because she wants to draw attention to herself. It's about her. It's not actually about the important issues that need to be discussed. And I'm in the school of thought that she would revel in a censure motion. And I think the less we talk about Lydia Thorpe and her antics, the better off we all are. It's all grandstanding for her own self-importance, not to actually deliver tangible solutions to the challenges we face and do the hard policy work. It's just grandstanding.
All right. No, I take the point. And as we heard from her earlier, we might push on to another topic which isn't exactly a subject of great momentum at the moment, but it does concern the always sensitive matter of abortion law and policy settings. So you'd both be aware that Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price has suggested the federal parliament shouldn't shy away from a national conversation around this. She has her own personal views about the sanctity of maintaining life. Late term is anywhere past the first trimester, as far as I'm concerned, said Senator Nampijinpa-Price. Now, Susan, is there any point, notwithstanding what's going on in Queensland at the moment, is there any point in generating a federal discussion around abortion policy?
This discussion's been had, and in the 21st century, women are able and should be able to make decisions about their bodies and their health. It's as simple as that. And I think this is a really challenging thing that people raise when there could be people listening who have progressed to pregnancy and they've identified that there's a fetal abnormality, their baby has something wrong with it, and they are in the process of having to decide what to do for their health and for the future of that fetus. I really think that these conversations that are happening in a political, a combative environment are completely out of order. This conversation has been had. We had to have it for a really long time, and we should not have to continue having it. Women should have absolute control and the right to determine what is best for them and their bodies.
All right, that's a very clearly expressed position from Susan Templeman there. Aaron, I note that some of your colleagues, Jane Hume would be one example today, not keen at all to venture into this area. Will it be progressed? What's your own attitude to at least generating discussion, which seems to be the objective here of Senator Nampijinpa-Price?
Well, Greg, as you said, Senator Jane Hume, one of the senior members of the Coalition, and also Deputy Leader Susan Ley have both come out very clearly today and said that as a coalition, we don't have any desire to change the current standings as they are from a federal perspective. It is clearly a state responsibility, which is why we're seeing the state election in Queensland become such a topical debate, because it's a state responsibility. I think that's where it should stay, and everyone within the coalition as individuals, and Jacinta Price as a member of the Nationals is entitled to her personal opinion, but the coalition have been really clear that we won't see any changes in this space.
All right. Well, that sounds like a position of some unity between the pair of you here on this program. Thank you for addressing it. I know it's sometimes sensitive and difficult to deal with that matter on national airwaves, but look, we've addressed it, and we will wrap it up there. Aaron Violi, Susan Templeman, thanks so much, and we'll see you back in Canberra before too long.
Thanks, Greg.
Indeed.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Authorised by Aaron Violi, Liberal Party, Lilydale.